All right, so step that frame. Just want to make sure I can hear myself. Testing 1, 2. We are live, episode 6, Claymores. Let me get this camera adjusted a little bit. I do apologize this morning. We are running technical difficulties like you would not believe. Been an interesting week. We've been all over the place this week. Put this camera down just a little bit. All right, we're going to go over a few things. We're going to get everybody a few minutes to get acclimated. I do apologize again for being a little late this morning. We'll get started here in about 2 seconds. Welcome to Claymores, episode 6. Nice. Y'all come on in, sit down, and get your cup of coffee. Alright. Alright, well, again, good morning. Y'all come on in, sit down, get you a chair. Claymores, episode 6, about to start. Good morning. Martinez, good morning. We are just getting warmed up. I was running a little bit late this morning, so we're going to let everybody get in on here. Appreciate you joining me. We're going to have a good episode today. I've got some things to talk about in reference to the insurance. They don't like the hail being shocked, so we're going to go over a few things. Again, we're going to get everybody in here in a few minutes. Go ahead and get this turned down. Good morning. How are you doing? All right. So, Claymore's about to get started. Good morning, all y'all. So we had some exciting stuff going on down in Portland, around Corpus Christi area over the weekend. They all got hit with big hail. Went down there and looked at some houses, and they definitely had damage. It's going to be not a matter of what damage. It's going to be a matter of how much damage, and that's going to be where it gets tricky as to how much they're going to pay in reference to putting you back. Again, this is Claymores. I am Kenny the Claim Defender. We are coming to you live from the War Room in the Hill Country out here in Texas. Good morning to all y'all that have joined me. I do appreciate you getting up this early and getting out here. So, anyway, this is where we are at. Like I said, I spent down there. It was an interesting thing. I climbed 5 roofs while I was down there, and it was all significant damage, for sure. So this week we're going to be talking about what a salt and pepper roof looks like, and that's just kind of it's kind of an interesting phrase to put things into, salt and pepper roof. What we mean by when we say salt and pepper roof is when large hail hits your roof. Adjust this camera down a little bit. When large hail hits your roof just a little bit, it'll start to, like I looked at one of the roofs I looked at yesterday was aqua blue, okay, which is probably a unique color, but it's down on the coast. All right, so it was a very deep aqua blue, and when I climbed up on there, you could see blue and black everywhere because the hail was 2 inch, 2.5 inch, and it was just there. A lot of people I tell when I was running places like Nebraska and what have you. Good morning for joining us. When I was a lot of times that big hail like that, when you got to the end of the ladder and went to climb up on the roof, there was no doubt the event that had happened. And so you're looking at the roof and you know that the hail's happened, and that's what you're looking at that point in time. There's not going to argue the event. You're going to be arguing, if you're arguing at all. I mean, because again, we don't really, and when I say argue, I don't mean actually yelling at anybody. We don't do that. There's no point in that. These field people and these desk people, we hope that they're doing the best to their knowledge. I mean, that's the whole point, is that they're doing their job and they're doing it to the best of their knowledge. And so, unfortunately, at this point in time, they're trained to ask questions in a certain way. They're trained to ask you things. I'm going to go through that here in a minute. I'm glad that all y'all joined us. We're actually going to get started here about 2 seconds. Let me get this over here in my little notes where I can track this while I'm looking at you. All right, so good morning to all this. Again, I am Kenny the Claim Defender. I am the guy that the insurance company wishes would go away. But guess what? I ain't going anywhere. I'm not. I'm here to stay. We're out on the field every day. Like I said, I was down in Portland, Texas this week looking at all the hail that hit down there Ingleside. Um, they got hit by big hail. Those roofs are what we call peppered, and I was going over that, what peppered is, and peppered is when you climb up on the end of the ladder and you can just see evident forever. Okay, so anyway, as I said, I am a Texas public insurance adjuster. My license is 333-1702. You're not under contract with me, and I cannot advise you unless you are under contract with me. That's how the Texas 4102 goes. You would have to be under contract for me to advise you on your claim, and that's where it comes in as public adjusters. The difference between us and working with the roofers, we can advise you on your claim policy. It's not just the damage, and that's where a lot of times we go. For example, what I was going to talk about this week in particular, not just the salt and pepper stuff, is what I found is that when you get out there on the roof, and I've had it, go one way or another, it never mattered to me when I was an IA if the roofer was already up there chalking the roof. In my opinion, if the roofer was already up there chalking the roof, unfortunately, a lot of them, even back then, I'm old. Even a lot of them back then, they didn't know all what damage was, and they didn't know a lot about the heat blisters and what have you. So they were marking damage that wasn't there. But the fact of the matter was, I'm looking at it, and some of them I would educate, and some of them I wouldn't. But the fact of the matter was, they were up there chalking the roof, and for me, in my opinion, how it was, the more people looking at the damage, the better it was. If you were already up there and you'd found damage, that's great. Show me where it's at. Let me get up here and let me document that too. Got a real cool story. I was up in it was either Maryland or Massachusetts. I can't remember which. Probably Maryland. And I was out in the country, and I climbed up on this roof, and this old timer climbed up on there with me, and he was just the nicest guy on the planet. And he gets up on there, and I could see where a roofer or somebody had been up there and chalked the roof. And so I asked the gentleman. I said, "Hey," I said, you already had a roofer up here looking at this, so you already know that hail damage is out there. What do you got? What do you say?" And I kid you not, excuse me, I kid you not, without skipping a beat, that old timer said, that roof told me not to tell you a dang thing." And I went, "Really?" I said, "Well, let me explain to you how this goes, sir." I said, "I'm up here looking for damage, okay? I'm up here looking for damage, and what I'm doing is I'm looking for damage as far as, good morning, son. And I'm going to look for my damage. So if the roofer's already found some damage, then in my opinion, show me what he found, and I'm going to look at his. I'm going to take a picture of it. If it's actually damaged, that's great. I will log that. We will move forward, and then I'm going to look for mine." And I kid you not, this old man who just a few minutes ago had been telling me, the roofer told me tell you a dang thing, which is sometimes prudent. All of a sudden he's going, "Man, he found damage over here, and he found damage over there," and it was legitimate damage. So I was able to document the roofer's damage. I was able to document my damage, and send it to the insurance company for indemnification. And the gentleman got indemnified. He was very happy. That was just it was just a good way to handle it. And so that was good information. Now, what I found recently is that they don't. I got up on a roof with the ladder assist person, and they did not want me. The roofers were already there, okay, and they were climbing up on the roof, and they wanted to start chalking the roof. And for me, I like having the roof chalked, already, so I didn't have an issue with it. I thought it was a good thing. And what I found was, the gentleman wanted them to stop, and so they stopped. They stopped roofing at the request, okay, and they stopped marking up the chalk damage at his request, so he could go ahead and do his 10 square. Which public adjusters, we know things that the roofers don't know. They will tell you that you got to have a 10 square, and that you got to have so many hits in a 10 square. And I would love for somebody to tell me where in a contract somewhere where it says that hail damage to a slope is identified by a 10 by 10 square, and how many hits in that 10 by 10 square. It makes that the difference between that roof being repairable and that roof being completely damaged. And to date, I'm not saying it's not out there, but what I am saying is that to date, I have yet to see anything on a contract that says when they do the 10 square, it's 6 hits, it's 10 hits, it's 12 hits, it's 2 hits. And what I've found from talking with colleagues, and I've got some very experienced people that we talk with. I mean, in particular, I don't like to name drop, but a whole lot. But Cal Spoon is a very good reference. He has a lot of knowledge, and he just comes at you just like it is, which is awesome. But damage is damage, and this is what talking with gentlemen like that, you find out that damage to a slope, damage to a roof. When we're arguing the amount of damage, again, is it what I would say is it repairable? Is it in when it is repaired, is it indemnified? When we're all said and done with, is the insured put back whole? I mean that's just what it comes down to. Are they put back whole? Can they do the repairs with the money that was given legitimately? Now, you find out things like, we all use Xactimate. We all use the software program that um, that's owned by the insurance company. So that dictates a lot of that should tell you a lot. Now, when I say these things, you got to realize the insurance company is required to be fair and honest. I mean, they're required to do this. This is just a fact. They are not allowed to be dishonest. They're taking in these premiums every month. They're required to be the expert on the claim. They're required to be the expert on the damage. And unfortunately, what I have found in my career is that's just not always the case. Okay, what I have found in my career, unfortunately, is that a lot of times it's the luck of the draw of the adjuster that you got. Okay, the adjuster that was assigned to you. What is their level of knowledge? What is their level of experience? Thank y'all for all that have joined me. This is awesome. I appreciate it. This is useful information. Again, my name is Kenny, the Claim Defender. So when you get into the desk or the field environment, I mean, when I was at the desk, for example, I got beat out for a field job, which blew me away by a guy that had been never in the field. He had never been in the field. Okay. Now, he was a really good adjuster. Don't get me wrong, by no means. This gentleman had skills he could recognize. Of course, his entire training was by the insurance company. He had never done this job before. And so, and he's still in the field and he's doing the job. And I know that he's trying to do the best that he can. I know this gentleman, as I've stated before. But the fact of the matter was, I'm sitting here going, I'm at the desk going, okay, I don't really care for this anymore. I'd taken a shot at it, that we had some medical issues going on, and there was some reasons for me to stay home and not travel anymore. For those of y'all that don't understand the job as an independent adjuster, a true independent adjuster, and when I say true independent adjuster, we don't get a weekly paycheck. Okay, you don't get a weekly paycheck. You get paid when the insured gets paid, and then when the carrier, or not the carrier, when the firm that you're working for gets paid, usually that's when you get paid. So a lot of times it takes time to get money coming to you, and that's where I'm doing this job gets very difficult for a lot of people. When I first started doing this, my father had asked me, he goes, man, that just seems like that's a really good job. Why wouldn't more people be doing this work? Well, I found out real quickly why more people wouldn't do this kind of work. Being a public adjuster, is a little bit different. I got a lot more control, and I would say a lot more power or authority, because I am working for the insured. I am representing them, and that's a big deal. Okay, and unfortunately, I guess at this point in time, the insurance companies aren't recognizing that. I've actually got, in particular, and I hate to name drop, I really do. I've got one of the top 5 carriers that is almost just refusing um, to send things directly to me. We did a demand letter. We did a letter of representation. So, I mean, the only thing I know to do is just file the TDI complaint, because they sent the policy to the insured. I asked for a certified copy of the policy so I could properly review. Without a certified copy of the policy, you don't know that all the endorsements and all the exclusions are included. So we asked for the certified copy of the policy. Well, I didn't get it. And then all of a sudden this morning I get an email from the insured saying that here's what was requested. Well, I'm going to go back and check. I didn't remember getting an email. I get, they come to my phone. I don't always get to check them when they come to my phone, but I see them. And I didn't see anything that was the policy, but I'll look. This is part of part of this episode was about was the chalking. Okay, so the insured, the insurance company, they send their guy out, and ladder assist, adjuster, whatever. You're already up on the roof and you're chalking this roof and you're looking for damage and what have you. And all of a sudden the guy's upset. You can get those people down. They don't need to be up there doing that. That's just they don't need to be up there doing that. Well, I can tell you right now the reason for that. And again, this is all opinion. Okay, the best I can tell you. Good morning, Lord. The best I can tell you about the reason they don't want that roof chalked. Okay, before they get up there, and in particular, this gentleman. I'd asked, do you want us to help you with your 10 square? You want us to help? Oh, yeah, let me, go. That would be awesome. I said, okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll help you. I said, just know this. I said, we're documenting all the damage. So we're not just documenting what's inside a 10 square. That 10 square doesn't mean a whole lot to me. And so we helped the gentleman go ahead and we documented, we helped him get his stuff. And then he got down, he went on to the next building. We finished documenting the rest of the roof and the rest of the damage. So when I get the report, a week or so later, of course, it's below deductible, which I always cracks me up when they do this. And they were replacing 2 vents. We got 2 vents. This house is 5,000, 6,000 square feet of shingles. Okay, but only 2 vents on this entire roof got hit. I mean, the impossibility of that is just, it isn't there. Okay, it's just ridiculous. And at this point in time, as of October 2nd, they have came out with the insurance journal saying that even minute hail is taking life cycles off this roof. So they've got to acknowledge us. And again, this gets back to the subject of what I was talking about, of how they don't like to have you up there on the roof identifying the damage in advance. And this is the reason that sound reason that I can say that they've done this. Okay, if you're up there and you've already identified damage, they've got to acknowledge it. Okay, if they don't acknowledge it, that is automatically it's a TDI violation. I would have to requires acknowledgement. I've got this in here, but you can look it up which TDI violation they actually violate when they do this. When they ignore the damage, it's almost ridiculous. Let me get here. Excuse me for a second. All right, so 542, and this is Texas law. So again, I'm just trying to, for all y'all that are watching from out of state, things can be a little bit differently, but a lot of the states follow Texas, Florida, and what have you, in reference to what we do here, probably because there's so many claims and there's so many people. But it says 542, they must investigate within 15 days. That's 542.055. 542.056, they must accept or deny. And then 541.060 is they can't misrepresent, delay, or conceal the facts. And that's the one we're getting at. Statute 541.060. You can look it up, okay? They are not allowed to misrepresent the facts. Think about that for a minute. You're up there. I'm a public adjuster. At this point in time, I talked to a gentleman yesterday. We've figured it. I've climbed in the thousands of roofs at this point in time in my career. We're probably talking well above 6,000-7,000 structures that I've had my feet on. I've looked at a lot of damage, okay? I've looked at a lot of damage. And if I'm identifying hail damage, it's hail. Even if it's minute, it's hail. It doesn't have to be a lot. That's the key. A lot is subjective. Where in your contract does it say it has to be a lot of damage? It does not, okay? And the contract, as I've stated before, through the smarter gentlemen than me that have educated me in reference to this, your contract is what's enforceable. Your contract is what they have to follow. Your contract is the only thing. If it goes to litigation, that's going to matter. Their guidelines, their unofficial guidelines that they're not going to reveal how they got to their determination, the industry standards. And this is another thing that cracks me up because when it suits them, they'll use the industry standards. When it doesn't suit them, they don't. Okay, that's just a fact. Okay, industry standard, IIRC, they use those all the time. That's for those of y'all that are not initiated. If you get an IIRC certification, that is for water mitigation. That is an expert on that subject. So, if, for example, if your adjuster was IIRC certified, they should know everything they need to know, everything that they need to do. And I'll give you, that's kind of brings me to a little thing. When I was on the floor, the team I was on, the manager that I was with actually wanted me to go ahead and get that certification because she knew that I could probably just take the test and walk out. And then she would have somebody on her team that was II certified, and that meant she could fire all these to me. They could ask all these questions to me because now I was a certified expert in the subject, even though I pretty much already am an expert in these subjects just based on my amount of knowledge and construction. I've done commercial buildings, I've done concrete commercial construction on a level that short of large industrial, you know, superintendents, no, you wouldn't understand what we deal with as far as plumbing. I've handled infrastructure and for buildings in Houston that were 31-story high rises. So I mean, I've built the concrete work for hospitals, and city halls and things of that nature. So my construction knowledge is extensive, not just in commercial. I also do large scale residential. I've done residential for years. Um, I've done a lot of my construction knowledge and background is what's led me to being the public adjuster. So that being said, when they get up there and they don't identify the damage, okay, that is a misrepresentation, and they're just not allowed to do that. Okay, it's also they can do failure to maintain the file documentation. They can't ignore it. Okay, and so that's what gets when they're telling you get down, don't chalk that, this and that and the other. Personally, they have no authority over you. There is no authority. You have no authority over them. You know what I mean? The homeowner's usually not climbing the roof. You're there. If you're the roofer, you're there on the homeowner's behalf. If he wants you up there identifying the damage for you, that's what they've got you there for. Okay. If the insurance company doesn't like that, in my opinion, I would say tough. Tough. I'm gonna mark this roof. You can acknowledge the damage or not acknowledge the damage. Okay, and that's just how it's going to be. You don't want to be combative, but it's not you that took up the combative point. Is what I'm getting at. At this point in time, they're the ones saying, "Get off the roof. Stop identifying damage." Okay, and again, I've been on the other side. I could see where that's not damage. Well, cool. That's great. Take a picture of it. All you're doing as far as the insurance company, if you're taking a picture of damage that was identified, that's not damage. It's a heat blister. Well, then you're showing that the person that was actually up there doing the inspection may not be qualified. So where would that hurt the insurance company? It doesn't. Okay. And so as I'm saying, when they don't want you up there chalking the roof, they don't want you up there doing these things. Um, the whole point of that is that way they don't have to identify the damage. I mean, if you don't have it up there chalked and it's not in their pictures, and this one in particular I was talking about where they sent me down and said these two hail vents were damaged. That's it. Out of this whole roof, these two hail vents, that's it. Okay. They didn't send me any photos. They didn't send me any photos. So it's like, okay, so I got the estimate. It says that the only thing that was damaged was two vents. And I've got the below deductible letter saying it's below deductible. Why didn't you send me any photos? You took a bunch of photos. We helped you mark the photos. How come in the report that was sent to the public adjuster, the photos aren't included? I guarantee you why. Because they're not wanting to recognize we had already been up on that roof. Excuse me. The roofers that had gotten there had got there early, and I had actually been on the edge of my ladder, and there was a couple of hail hits off the gutter there was a couple of hail hits right off. Then it was like, hey, this is damage. You understand? I didn't want them up there identifying stuff that wasn't damaged. I mean, that was just the point. So since I was able to get to them in advance, it's like I made sure they understood what hail was. They did. They were clear as to what hail was. I didn't have to educate them when I identified what I considered hail. They were like, yes, that's what we're looking for. And that's what we did. So, like I said, we identified that until the guy got there, and then he asked us to stop, which we did. Again, I'm not looking for a battle. That's not what I'm doing. But I did find it strange that when I got the report, there were no pictures included. Why would that be? Why would there be no pictures included? Um, you got the estimate, you got the below deductible letter, you just left out the photos. It was an accident. I don't think so. I really just don't think that was the case. Okay, so know this, again, I'm not, as a public adjuster. Generally speaking, you try not to beat up on the insurance companies too much, but you're in good hands. We're your neighbor. Know this, and when you call in, they're just so nice. Well, that's scripted, okay? And the reason I know this is because at one point in time, when I was actually taking these phone calls, and what they have to do when they go in is they go in and they work a couple hours doing their claims, or they have a schedule and they're kept on a tight schedule. I mean, they don't, their breaks are all monitored. When they get up from their desks, it's all monitored. They can only get up for so long. It's ridiculous. It's corporate is what it is. Okay. So you've got the desk adjusters are coming in, and they have to spend so many hours on the phone, generally speaking. And it kind of depends. If they're a home desk adjuster, it could be a little different. But the fact of the matter is, generally speaking, they are on the phone for a certain amount of hours a day, taking phone calls, just answering questions and going through routine stuff. That's just kind of what they do. Um, the rest of the time, they're working their claims and they're going through the policy and what have you. But what I'm getting at is, I had to have a script in front of me. I mean, I'm an older guy, so it takes me a little while. Repetition is key with me. Okay, so good morning. This is Kenny. I with da 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 with the No Name Insurance Company, and what can I do for you this morning? Oh, well, I'm real sorry. I'm real sorry about that. I can tell you this right now. There was one day that I don't remember if it was an event that happened or what, but I had came home, and I've been married for 36 years, and my wife was just like, I just wanted you to say I'm sorry. And I was like, I've said so sorry. I'm sorry so many times a day. I just can't. I don't have it in me. I don't have another I'm sorry in me. And that's just sad. I mean, I'm the nicest guy on the planet. I enjoy my work. I actually went and took that job because that job was supposed to be better than what I was doing. I like my job. I told that to the people when I joined there. I said, no, I like the field. It was great. I like traveling. I mean, I'm former Army, okay? More, keep a go bag. I kept a go trailer. We jumped and go. Ken, we need you in Nebraska. Ken, we need you in Colorado. Ken, we need you wherever. Boom, I'm gone. 24 hours, I'm gone. I'm out the door. Let's get this. Let's start climbing roofs. Let's do this. And, not everybody's like that. So I went to the inside and hoping to, help people from the inside. And what I found was it was more or less just a big meat grinder. I mean, they weren't looking for people that thought. I mean, there was a lot of conversations that I would have with people that were higher up the food chain with me, and my conversations with them made sense, but they went nowhere. I would be talking to them, go, hey, what about, this, you're telling them that they have to follow these guidelines, that these guidelines are strict, and if they don't follow these guidelines, their bonuses and their pay is all affected by it. And yet I know that this isn't correct. I've been doing this for, almost a decade now. You hired me in as a senior property adjuster. I assume it's because I already knew what I was doing. And I can't go along with this, and I wouldn't. And I got at one point in time, I had an executive actually tell me, well, Ken, you're an adjuster. It's your license. If you know it's wrong, write in the notes what you know, write in the notes, how you feel it should be written, and justify your case, and do that. That's it, that's what it is. You are the adjuster. And after that meeting, I bet you I had 100 conversations with other adjusters telling me I thought the guidelines were law. I thought that we didn't have any other choice but to do what what the book says. They actually tell you when you're going, pull up the guidelines, control F the contract, pull up the guidelines, be friendly, be compassionate. I'm sorry. I'm real sorry about that. I'm real sorry about that. That is a real. I'm just so sorry that you're having to deal with that. Let me see what I can do. Doesn't that sound, like I care about what you're doing? Well, that's practiced. Again, I had a script in front of me. This is Kenny with da da da. I'm. What can I do for you today? And then at the end, I'm so happy. We're just so glad and proud. To be of service to you. And you use these key words. And at one point in time, I was getting. If anybody talks to me for any length of time, figures out real quickly that I'm real passionate about what I do. I really like what I do. I really like drilling down. It's important to me to be, for lack of a better term, an expert on several subjects. So I will, when I was doing construction, for example, I would ask the engineers, why am I doing this? How come I'm doing that? So, um, that's so when you're passionate like this, practicing a script gets very difficult. And it took me some practice. And I finally got it. Don't get me wrong. I mean, after a couple years of doing it, you almost, good morning. This is such and such. This is Kenny with such and such. And what can I do for you today? And oh, that's just terrible. I'm so sorry. Let me go through your policy and see what I can do. And so when the public adjuster is asking you not to speak to the insurance company, they're not asking you to be rude. They're not asking you what they're asking you is kind of like the attorney does when you go to court, or he doesn't want you to say anything, because anything you say can and will be used against you. It will be. I mean, how many people have called in, and the first thing you hear is this call can and will be recorded for training purposes. Well, if it can and will be recorded for training purposes, it means they can pull it back anytime they want to. Well, the only time they're going to pull it back, more than likely, is when it goes to litigation and they need it. Okay. And so when it goes to litigation, the insurance attorneys will actually do that. They will subpoena a lot of that information to get that information, because they want to know what you've been told. Because when the insurance company has a tendency, they'll look in your file and say, "Hey, you are covered for that." Even if you're not covered for that, you can get compensation sometimes, because again, the people that you're talking to on the phone are supposed to be experts about the claim. They're supposed to be experts about the process, and they are supposed to be the absolute know-it-all. And when they tell you you were covered, and then they find out that you're not, a lot of times you can get, they have to cover. And I've had this before. This is how bad it'll get. I actually had one claim in particular, and this was awful how this worked out. This gentleman was very great. He was. I felt camaraderie with him. We had talked and we had spoke, and when we went through his policy, I had determined that he did have coverage based on what I found in his policy. There was no doubt it was covered. Okay, and I told him, yeah, and it was like $20,000 worth of all kinds of little things. It might have been 30 by the time it was done with. Well, when I sent that up and started going through, I got kickback right away from management. Boom, this is not covered. Can you look at this wrong? And I went, I disagree. It says right here it is covered. And so we're going through all this. And my management said nope. And they went to, at that point in time, had went to a director level. And the director had also said, nope, this is not covered. You have to let this go. This is not covered. So I have to follow my sword. And I go back and I call the insured up and I say, hey, Mr. Such and Such, I do apologize, but it looks like I was mistaken. I'm being told that you don't have coverage for this, and that I'm going to, I'm needing to inform you of that. And he was mad, needless to say. And I went, sir, I'm looking at it and I see I misinterpreted is the best I can tell you. And this is my fault. And I fell on my sword. I just told it, I took the whole brunt for it because I had told him. Well, he didn't take it lying down, so now he wants to talk to management. He's calling my management, and they're kind of ignoring him a little bit because they know he's mad. They don't want to talk to him. And then it goes to, he threatens to take him to litigation, and it goes to a director level. All of a sudden, it comes back to me, and I've got a manager and a director at my desk telling me, we made a mistake, Ken. Well, actually, what they told me was, you made a mistake. And I looked right at them and said, I didn't make a mistake twice. I didn't make a mistake twice. It's either covered or it's not covered. Okay. And I told them it was covered. You told me it wasn't covered. If you're coming back to tell me that it's covered, I didn't make the mistake. Okay. So I had to call this gentleman back and let him know that now he had coverage, and that he had raised enough fuss, which I couldn't tell him that, but he had raised enough fuss. They actually went back and looked in their policy and dug in. They came back out and told me, well, and either way, I took a hit for it. I was told point blank that how I had looked at it was wrong, how I had assessed it was wrong, even though he did have coverage and we paid for it all. And that was when I found out that, for the most part, as far as the directors and some of the others, that was when it got escalated. When it escalates to a director, man, they don't want you talking to the directors. They just don't want you doing that. That's not going to be good. Don't do that. Okay. And so, again, when I was getting back to, as far as the level of knowledge, and this is exactly what I was talking about. So I'm sitting here with 20 years in construction, 10 years as an adjuster. I've got a director who's no longer licensed as an adjuster. I've got a manager who's no longer licensed as an adjuster. And they're telling me that, according to this policy, that it's not covered. And it was just wrong. It just wasn't the case. It was very much covered, and they had to come back and tell them. But the problem for me was, you had upset this gentleman on a level that was ridiculous for no reason. I mean, if they had actually just taken the time from the beginning to analyze everything properly, maybe they would have seen it my way. Or was it just an automatic kickback that, no, we don't want this, we're not going to cover this. And it was the craziest thing. It was the craziest thing that, after all that. But the gentleman, he told me later, he said, Kenny, goes, I know that you were trying to get this covered from the beginning. And for me, wasn't trying to get it covered. It was covered. It was in his policy. He had the coverage. The problem was the management. The management, wasn't willing to look at it. So we're going to do to Gap Insurance. Have I ever seen a credit score? I got a question came along live. Ruined due to Gap Insurance. I would have to say no. I don't do a lot of auto. Generally speaking, I do property. So I do. I have had the issue. I have had companies try to sell me Gap Insurance before, and what I told them was, at one point in time, generally speaking, on like my boat or my RV, I try to get an RCV policy as to an ACV policy. That way, if something does happen to it, you get 100% payback. I've got a friend of mine actually down in Portland right now that's dealing with that. His RV was hit, and I didn't ask him, actually. As a matter of fact, I'll probably reach out to him today and see if it was an ACV or RCV policy. But they like to sell you the RCV policy, just so you know. And usually, they like to sell you the ACV policy. Just so you know, they don't like to sell you the RCV, especially on your boat or your RV. And it turned out that I think it was only like an extra $8 a month for the boat to make it an RCV policy, which was ridiculous. So it came out to be not a big bunch of money for a $60,000 boat. It was cheap insurance to actually keep it, so I didn't have to have the Gap Insurance. And it's funny, because when the guy asked me about the Gap Insurance and I told him no, I said I had the RCV policy. The first thing he reached out to me was like, well, what's that? And this was the boat salesman. So my experience with any sort of Gap Insurance or any sort of auto policy would be limited to my personal experience, because I didn't do auto at the desk. I didn't do it at the field. My career has been primarily construction background, as far as, and then my adjusting background has been completely in property and casualty. Like I said, it has been extensive. I've ran claims, Washington, D.C., Maryland, Nebraska, in everywhere. So just so you know, I do appreciate the question. That was a cool question. I would say I'm not sure about the vehicles, but I like the RCV. That's probably going to get you what you want. So back to what we were talking about in reference to uh, the insurance company not wanting you up there taking care of they don't want you up there chalking the damage. They don't want you to uh, identify what they need to be looking at in advance. So know this. Excuse me. Your biggest weapon is going to be to keep a claims diary, okay, and take photos, okay. Take photos like crazy, because any photos that you have that they don't have is not going to look good on them, okay. You have photos of damage that they don't have. That's just not going to be acceptable. I mean, it's just not. They should have found that, and especially if you can say, I identified this for them. Okay, we looked at this while they were there. Okay, so there's no reason for them not to take all the photos that they have, and there's no reason for them to actually get upset about the fact that you're identifying damage for them. I mean, if it's not damage, they can literally document it and say, "Hey, the insured identified this as damage. I took a picture of it, I noted it, and I identified that it is not damage." Okay, and that's that. That's that. The problem is what we do in property and casualty is subjective. It's very, very subjective. Okay, so I had a gentleman actually told me yesterday that he sends a lot of his people to Hague training. And Hague training is awesome if you understand what Hague training is. Hague training is a industry standard for building. They give you a basic general knowledge of construction. But the Hague training alone isn't enough. And I'll give you an example. I had a very skilled adjuster, had been doing it a long time, but had not went through Hague training. When she went through Hague training, at that point in time, she comes to me and she says, "Hey Ken, she had learned what a wind zipper is." And for all those y'all that don't know what a wind zipper is, that is when the shingle does like a Z pattern as it comes down, and it's lifted in this Z pattern. Okay. And generally speaking, that is an installation defect. It happens when they high nail, or there's several different factors of what can cause that, but it's definitely identified as an installation error. Okay. The problem with that was when she came to me and she had the picture of almost one whole square, almost a whole 10 by 10 that had been peeled off from the edge of the roof. Okay. So you got a whole 10 foot by 10 foot square peeled off, and at the end of it is this wind zipper. Okay. So, God bless her. She's looking at it. She's going, "Ken, this is an installation error." And I'm looking at her and I go, I see the wind zipper. I said, "How old's the roof?" And I think she said it was either 10 or 12 years. And at that point in time, I'm advising her. I said, "Ma'am," I said, "just buy the roof." I said, "You're never going to win that in court. You're just not going to win that in court. You're going to say that roof went 10 seasons, 12 seasons without any issue. And then on its 12th season, now the installation defect." In my personal opinion, you would have a hard time proving that 10 or 12 years later, the install is what caused the damage, is my point. I'm not saying that there wasn't an installation issue. What I'm saying is the installation issue, it wasn't the wind was. The wind picked it up from the edge, which is common. It takes a lot of lift from the edge, and it picked it up and it peeled it. Okay, so to prove that it peeled it and that it was an installation error, like I said, in my opinion, 10, 12 years later, that would be very, very difficult to prove that was installed inaccurately, to the point that's why the damage was there. So, that being said, I'm coming to the end of the episode. I don't have any more questions, so I'm glad that everybody has joined me. I want you to know that next week I'm going to have a couple of guests. I've got a construction expert. He does a lot of stuff for the insurance attorneys as far as an expert. I also I'm going to bring on a claims specialist, and he also does a lot of construction. Doug Oliver will be joining us next week if I can figure out the technology. And joining him, we've got another public adjuster out of Florida who's very, very skilled. Angel Burgos has over 5,000 claims under his belt. I'm going to have these two gentlemen in here next week, and we're going to be talking several different things. I'll give you an update teaser on the conversation we're going to have next week. I am so glad that everybody has joined me this morning. This has been episode 6 of Claim Wars, and again, I am Kenny, the claim defender. I am the guy that the insurance company wishes would go away. My license number is 333-1702. If I can help you, reach out to me, 830-353-2969. I am licensed in the state of Texas. Okay? If you're not under contract with me, I am not representing you. All the information on this podcast has been for educational purposes only. Again, next week we'll be talking big league strategy and real world claims with some very, very well-known experts in the field. Until then, document everything, question everything, and for the love of all shingles, call a public adjuster before your field rep forgets what he saw. Okay, this has been episode 6 of Claim Wars, where comedy meets combat and documentation wins. We will see y'all next week. Happy y'all joined us.